Hello and welcome to another presentation from the Missing Faces in Teaching. My name is Dr. Marie Charles. Number 7 into a brand new year of 2025, which promises to be a very exciting year. I'd just like to, as we move into 2025, to remind ourselves that this work, this research is based upon a very, very important premise, supported, sustained, reinforced through lots and lots of evidence. But Shakor or Shakakoret, black people populated the globe from the origins of humanity, holding leadership roles and developing models of governance throughout time. That statement I've put back onto the opening slides to position ourselves historically and psychologically so that we're always understanding the prominence of Shakor people through history as they moved through across all of their geographical spaces in which they found themselves. And so today, and for the rest of this presentation, I'm going to focus on Ireland, and I'm just going to take through onomastics, I'm going to take one particular surname, as you can see them coming through onto the slide. Annesley. Now the root, stem, or origin of that particular word is Annes or Anna. And I'm going to show today that movement into Europe and as a kind of new introduction into Italy. I'm finding through my dictionary of surnames, which is my current project at the moment, that I have a tremendous amount of evidence in Italy as well. So you will see that particular surname and its cognates or variants or diminutives moving through the rest of Europe, and primarily in Ireland. And so, as you can see on the screen, we have the Earl of Annesley, deeply melanated as all of the British Isles, including Scotland and Ireland and Wales, were Shakor people, black people. And so we find that the Earls of Annesley, and this is in issue 14, excuse me, it's really cold. The Earls of Annesley were major landowners in County Down in Northern Ireland. And today we're going to look at a very, very interesting map that is many, many centuries old as we look at the configurations of this particular map. But we know that they were landowners because of the physical evidence, and I talk about that in issue 14. But as Dr. John Henry Clarke always reminds us, and I always like to keep interjecting that when we're talking about history, we always bring it up to a current event. All history is a current event. And so in the popular TV series that we have here in Britain, I'm not sure how that translates across different regions internationally, but it's called Who Do You Think You Are?, in which celebrities, they trace their individual ancestry. Now, there is a very famous black chef called Ainsley Harriott. Now, Ainsley, as a variant of Annesley, you know, some of these surnames find themselves as first names. That's very important. But he goes onto the program, and the researchers and the people in control of that particular program informed him that his ancestors were slaves in Jamaica. And he was also informed that his ancestors came from Scotland, who were related to the Gordons. Now, the Gordons, which I also have an FB crest in issue 14, but Ainsley Harriott sat throughout that 60-minute show believing that his name was connected as a slave name. Nobody told him, and then we ask ourselves, why would they, that his name was connected to the Earls of Annesley, and they were landowners in Ireland, you see. And so what I have found is that the programme's inconspicuous reference to true history, including the Cromwellian black expulsions from Britain, remain a central feature of this series. And so we find the Annesleys in Ireland. And then when we dig a little bit deeper methodologically, we find the root of Annesley in France. But Annes or Anna or Annette were the lords of Brittany. And they were also noblemen in the Chateau Fremont of Annette or Annay in France. Now you'll see that particular location on the next slide as we see it on the map. And you see, because we know the previous work that I have done on the Normans, that the Normans were bringing through all of these names and these surnames and influencing the globe, not just Ireland, which is so very, very critical. It's such a powerful piece of evidence, knowing the phenotype of the Normans that has been totally and utterly held back from us. And see that particular key or that door has opened so much in terms of my research. And so at the lower portion of this slide, you see another family of the Annesleys that would become through time, through those vowel changes, Ainsley, Annesley, Annesley, and Astley. Now, that particular crest also finds itself in parts of Scotland as well. And we see the Irish and Scottish kinfolk populating all of those regions on the map. Okay, on this particular slide, it is just a little interjection just before we return back to Annesley surname. I want to show the evidence that I'm currently working on in my dictionary of surnames is the FB origin of the shamrock. Now, mainstream teaching, mainstream history, education has completely co-opted this particular sign, and that it exclusively is in the hands of later Europeans. But I'm going to show the FB cultural continuities across the map through heraldry as well, that this is it is a foundational or an FB semiotic. And so we find that the shamrock in the literature, it tells us that the Celtic trefoil, which originated in the East. Now, we could even look at Dr. Wesley Mohammed's work centered around that particular region on the map to show the founding populations. And that pre-Islamic Arabs called the trefoil shamrock with a KH, the three-lobed lily or lotus flower of the moon goddess Trinity, a design of three yonis, which appeared on the artifacts of the Indus Valley civilization, as well as on stone pottery and woodwork in Mesopotamia, Crete, and Egypt between or over 5,000 years ago. Now, this is the section which many will be able to relate to. Christians pretended that St. Patrick explained the doctrine of the Christian Trinity to the Irish by exhibiting the shamrock. However, the Irish were worshipping this emblem, we should interject original Irish, of their triple goddess long before Christianity appeared on their land. It stood for her triple door, and her god sometimes bore the title of Tre Filgrud, triple bearer of the triple key. Now, that evidence clearly supports our understanding of the ancient aspects of that particular sign or semiotic in FB populations and culture. And as you can see on this particular slide, you see that little, it looks like a bolt of lightning. I want you to just keep that in mind because I will demonstrate that on the next slide. Its presence in migration. But we can see from the left crest the shamrock or the trefoil or the triple yoni, you see, the triple yoni from Geoffroy Moreau, and he's from France. Geoffroy would become Geoffrey, and he was a wealthy merchant from Lyon in France, and this is the same region where the Nicholas surname was located from my last presentation, you see. Then we have the crest of Madeleine Mabière, and the triple door of the triple yoni is positioned between two Moorish heads, and she was the wife of Jean Guimel, Member of Parliament from Doms in eastern France. Now, much of this evidence on the heraldry, which I'm currently working on, is showing the bourgeoisie or the political leaders in France as they began to have this prominent presence in terms of the structural components of that particular region, and they start to influence and move through into the rest of Europe. But what's so fascinating about this work that I'm currently involved in is that by following particular signs and symbols as semiotic texts, that I'm finding them all over Europe. And so that particular yoni symbolism is also found, as you can see, on the third element from Germany. And this is from Gruppenberg surname, from Hamburg and Bavaria and Württemberg, which was the same region, let's keep this in mind, the same region as the Pistorius surname on one of my presentations. And if you look at issue 17, you will see the surname, which becomes a first name. Eric, Mumm, and Kentman surnames are from the Hamburg region in Germany. So we have this wonderful picture emerging when we have the evidence in front of us. You see, people can only change their minds when they're permitted to see the evidence. And here we are with the evidence in front of us on this particular slide. These crests are 3, 4, and 500 years old, you see. Then we have, which I'm not sure if it's come onto the slide, but this is a Knight of the Round Table, and if you look very carefully, you can see the same symbolism of the triple yoni or shamrock on his crown, you see. and he is a knight of the Round Table. That particular image is also from France. But I also have another document which I'm working on in connection to my series, my dictionary series, and it has a whole list from this particular primary source of the knights of the Round Table. And in there we find the surname Brun from my last presentation. We find all of these names connected to these FB populations, and we know the knights of the Round Table, King Arthur or Arthur, which would become Marthor, were all FB populations, and they were spread all over Europe, into Spain, Iberia, and into Italy. I write about the Knights of the Round Table in the Dragon issue, which is issue 13. And so, collectively, the evidence clearly points through the FB origins of the shamrock. When you look at the shamrock next time, I hope a new concept has been presented into your psychological faculty. And so as we move back into the surname of Annesley, the Lords of Ireland, that would form the variants of Annes, Anne, Anna. I'd like us to just look at the map. Well, before we just get onto the map, you can see those lightning bolts and those previous crests of the shamrock. That's what they represent, where they were found. But it's also so critically important that we begin to understand the importance of the value system that has been totally eroded. Of course, it's returning now as we get back into our culture and we rescue the culture and the history and all of its value components. That those individuals on the previous crest from France and Germany and the wife of Gimel from France, is that they were showing through their economy of signs this total balance, that they were balancing these feminine and masculine principles. So through the crest, that they were showing their reverence and their balanced and their veneration of the feminine essence. Now, for many of us, when we come to this realization and understanding that a lot of it is alien because of this patriarchal dominance that is saturated in all aspects of our culture and our life and what we encounter. But they, excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cold, but they were preserving those very, very important aspects of a Maatian cosmological, philosophical framework, you see. That's very, very important. And that's what the shamrock represented. Now, totally taken over by another cultural group. But beneath that is the true meaning and understanding. And so when we look at the map, we can see that from slide 1, we can see that Annes or Annette is approximately 70 miles from Normandy, and that is seen by that red dot. We also see that they form a variant, a diminutive of Annesley is found in northern Italy through the name Anastagi. And as that comes onto the map, you will see, as it comes onto this particular slide, you will see those FB cultures of northern Italy. I want us to look where that pink dot is on the map. This is so very, very important. Our concepts of Italy, yes, as its kind of shape, the boot and of Italy, we know that it's connected to the Mediterranean basin. But what we forget is that the northern parts of Italy are sandwiched between the Swiss Alps and Austria and parts of southern Germany. And so what we have found through onomastics is that all of those populations, through their heraldry, through their material culture, are moving and migrating through on the top of this map of Italy, you see. So when you see my dictionary of surnames, you will see all of these cultural continuities from these particular crests and these foundational black families. But this is what we find. We find that Anastaghi from northern Italy, and I hope this crest has actually come onto the slide, but they are 3 Shakur individuals from this family who have that very, very important Moorish signification across their eyes. You see, they have the bando across their eyes. And I spoke about that through the Arnold crest from Germany, if you recall. Please go back and have a look at that. And I also talk about the importance of the bat and deep esoteric teachings associated with this insignia and symbol across the face. And it begins to move through into France and to Britain, and it begins to form the judiciary system, which is very, very important. But if you look over my shoulder, I'm not quite sure which way it translates or transverses, but you can see behind me that there is the antecedents, the African antecedents of that symbolism, and it is the Nazu mask across the eyes, also found in West Africa and Ireland. And I write about that in issue 7. So collectively, you see how that particular symbolism is moving globally across the map. You see, through surnames, through their signs and symbols. Then we find a form of Annesley as Annes from London. And it has the lion, the red lion, as its main symbol, but it also has a melanated arm protruding from the top, holding 3 flowers. Now, the fact that this, and please look at the map, it's just so very, very important, the sheer spread of one surname, you see, and how you contract those continuities. But that hand emerging out of the Annes family surname from London is on an angle, you see, and the angle symbolizes a form of knowledge. And I write about that in issue 14, and it is the L's, or the light bringers, you see, of knowledge systems. So this is what they were able to do, these FB populations, these cultures. They were able to capture in a semiotic text and through their economy of signs, deep esoteric teachings and meanings, following from their surnames, from their material culture, and to their value system. Okay, that yellow star which you see on this slide, just keep that in mind as we begin to connect that with Germany. But we're back in Ireland on this particular slide. and we're moving into cartography and the importance of maps. Now, that map that you see is a 400-year-old map. Now, when we first look at it, we say, okay, 400 years, it's interesting, but I want us to focus on its shape and island. Now, from slide 1, we looked at the Annesley family. Now, they were found primarily in Ulster, which is the northern part or the top of the Irish map. But we must not get confused or myopic in our own understandings of these migrations, because we're going to look at the bottom of the map and a couple of examples in the region of Munster, you see. Now, just before we get onto that, just so I can explain that I'm usually just looking at a blank slide. So if I I'm waiting for things to come down and reveal themselves, so I'm not actually talking to a blank screen. But I hope it has come onto the slide. But I have enlarged the map of Ireland, the 400-year-old map of Ireland, because the cartographer has depicted Ireland as a FB male face. And when I saw this, I was just blown away. I thought, this is incredible. So would the evidence suggest that the cartographer was melanated themselves? Or was the individual, as a later European, untainted by what would later take over in terms of the dominance and the takehold and the takeover of culture? But let's look at the aspects of this particular map, because embedded within are tiny faces, you see. The bottom half of the map has a face. The nose is comprised of a face. The top of the head, or the upper regions of Ireland, is a face. The side parts of the northern parts, there is a face. I mean, this is just incredible. This 400-year-old map is showing who the primordial settlers were in the form of a map. But when we look at the lower part of the southern province of Ireland, called Munster, it was anciently known as Mumu. And we know from the evidence in issue 6, we know that archaeology and anthropology has confirmed the settlement of Mumu or Munster as 33,000 years old, which has not hit mainstream news, and it won't do. It's up to us, the scholars and the grassroots organisations and supporters of this work, to take this forward to a bigger audience. And so we know that the original founding populations of Munster and the whole of Ireland were Shakor people or black people, and the name Mumu, we find, actually translates into the Dalari elders this is from Indonesia, you see, the global importance of language and names. And they were called the Dalari elders, and they called themselves Mumu Ri Uta, Lord of the land, you see. Then we find Munster as Munsterland in Germany, and that yellow star will show its precise location on the previous slide and the map. And so the German and the Irish connection, which we also saw in the Angles and Engels of Anglia in issue 18, are moving through and populating and influencing all of those cultural traditions and material culture that we find. Now, I was just looking, I just got a little bit distracted because if you look at the map, this one doesn't actually show it, but it kind of suggests, and I definitely show it in concrete form in issue 18, but there was no North Sea 12, 15,000 years ago. And it was literally a land bridge. And they could walk across, literally just walk across the grassy plains, you see, because there was no North Sea. So those entry points are very important when we think about this work and identifying the original populations. We also find from Mumu, those southern parts, because all history is a current event, we find the surname Haman and their crest, as it appears on this slide. And they owned Myrtle Grove, and it is a beautiful estate in Mumu, Cork, County Cork in Ireland. And it's absolutely magnificent. Now, as a point of interest, we find that he was Walter Raleigh, one of the notable figures in history at the court of Queen Elizabeth I. He was given this particular estate by the Crown for his services to the Crown. And he received all of the lands and the property of the Myrtle Grove mansion. And I write about that in issue 14. But the original holders were the Hayman family, as you can see on this slide. But the surname Hayman is originally a German surname, spelt with an E and two M's. And it is also a variant of Heinemann or Heinemann, you see, which is just incredible. And so when we look at the FB Irish as primordial settlers of the land, and we gather all of this information together, we can see through their surnames, through the maps, through the material culture, and through those migrations moving up from Europe and the rest of the planet. We can see how they would become the original holders of all of this information and these crests and these signs and these symbols. But we have to keep digging all the time. And what we must also do is, as Dr. Amos Wilson teaches, he's such an incredible elder and scholar, a massive individual, in the sense of understanding what history actually is. And it is not the mere recapitulation of dates and times. It is our total orientation within and towards the world. But we see who controls history, how it is taught, and what elements or aspects are put into the textbooks. This type of interrogation is very rarely shown in the textbooks, and we must take hold of it and start to teach our children this. It's just so very, very important through one name how you can uncover the original populations. But we can only do it when we show the evidence. And staying in Ireland over the holiday, I was working on more evidence that I had found in Ireland, and was compiling a series to put back into another issue. But I found back into Ulster, which is the northern part of Ireland, I found more cultural continuities that would support the FB origin of Ireland. Because that's what we do as researchers. We don't just sit back and think, yeah, I found that and I published it and now I'm moving on. We're constantly integrating, interrogating, and adding to what we have already done. This is what we must do. We have to we never rest on our laurels. We just keep meeting our burden of proof, if you like, and we just keep going with the evidence. But I found this wonderful example from a carved stone heads built into the wall of Clannaphilip Church in Ulster. And you can see very, very clearly the continuities and the continuation of very, very deep esoteric teachings and a value system being retained in Ireland. Why? Because they are the same people, you see. And just as you look at the word Clannaphilip, you see, we move past certain phrases because they don't mean anything. But once you get into the methodologies of onomastics, certain words will just keep resonating all the time. Clannaphilip means obviously the clan of Philip, but Philip is a German name, and I have the crest, which shows an FB German family with the name Philip. It's everywhere. The evidence is everywhere. It's overwhelming. We just have to keep digging and bringing it out to show our communities can only change their minds if they are permitted to see the evidence. And what you see on this example from Ulster are the clear forms of resonance that have been carved onto the face, which signifies the importance of one of Jehuti's ancient maxims, that everything vibrates, everything moves, nothing rests. And in issue 5, I show the importance of that in concentricity, that we are always becoming, that we're always unfolding. And that was the importance of putting these significations and these markings on the material culture. I've also found that because all of my work is totally interconnected, it is one jigsaw puzzle that just keeps unfolding and reinforcing and supporting earlier statements or earlier work. But there's another region in Germany called Regensburg or Regensburg, and there is a Scottish and Irish connection. Now, what I have found, and this is in issue 18, is that I found one particular Moorish model that was found in another region in Britain. And I discovered from a 1968 text that this church was built in this region in Germany, and you'll see it on the map. And it was a cathedral, was built. This is the text. The cathedral was built, constructed by Irish monks established in Regensburg, known, are you ready? Known as Scoten Kirche, or the Scots. And the portal with its sculptured decoration is quite staggering for its FB origin and the evidence that it shows. And what it shows are plumed figures. You see, these Moorish plumed figures. And it's incredible, it's beautiful, it's absolutely magnificent to look at. But sadly, a lot of it has been under the reconstruction project, has been rebuilt, and the FB origins and their signatures, if you like, architectural signatures, have been removed. So, it's very important that we can document this, because much of it is being destroyed and removed. And so this evidence that you see on this particular slide is part of the work that I did over the holidays to enhance issue 6, which you will see on the next slide. And so much of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks, I've given a little bit of a flavour and a taster in today's session, particularly from the last slide, of what I have now included in issue 6. It's now an expanded edition, which includes the work that I have found quite recently, and I've updated it on Ireland. And of course the crests in this particular presentation are from my other work in parallel, which is my dictionary series. But it is important to note that this new expanded edition of 6 has, which I believe is a first again, it has the evidence of the 5th century abbot St. Kieran. Now, this is where we get the first name Kieran from, but I show him with his shakor face on a poma, which is a crozier, which is a religious staff, and you see his face. He's completely melanated. And I show onomastically how his name can be traced back to black origins, Keir, and we also can see the crests with the Keir family. But Kieran in this issue is shown and described through the literature as the black one, which is just incredible. Completely blew me away. Just so wonderful to find this evidence. And so you will read about that. You will also see how from the very beginning with slide 1, how we looked at the Lords of Annesley, and that surname Annesley moved from Ireland, or rather moves up from Italy and into Ireland, and you will see evidence of all of those Irish surnames in issue 14, with over 400 original surnames documented and evidenced in that particular issue. And so as we come to the end of the first presentation in 2025, it's going to be a very, very exciting year as more revelations are uncovered and documented on the FB populations around the globe with my work, and of course the support of other colleagues as well. We have to keep moving forward. It is the time to rescue, recover, and position this culture, this FB culture, as we move forward and reclaim our identities, our proper identities, so that we know who we are. And Professor Carbonet is such a wonderful force in terms of our knowledge and understanding of self, and he always says how wonderful to know who you really are. What a wonderful thing to know who you really are, and you wouldn't want to be anybody else when you know who you are. And so I ask you to support this work of Emfit. Until next time, Ku Amsha, to awaken.